Go there. And then we start off with the third step prayer, Rob.
And we will find that on page 63 of your big book. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
All right. Well, folks, we are on chapter 11, A Vision for You, right at the very beginning of that. And it is what basically is a chapter of hope. And it's a great chapter. It's dedicated to just making sure that everything is the way that we want it. It's a great kind of roundup of everything kind of put together, and we will enjoy going through this. Rob, let's go.
So, page 151, everybody. A vision for you. For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good, but not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. It was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure.
Boy, how many times did I do that? One more attempt and one more failure. I can scarcely remember, but I do remember the fact that there was release from care, boredom, and worry, and there was companionship and colorful imagination. We had fun. Drinking was a nice extension to just being a normal person and enjoying other people's company. It wasn't the focal point. It was just an ingredient to a good time. And there at the end, not only were there not people around, and I think most of us can relate to that, but there was also, just the feeling of dread, that guilt and regret after taking even the first sip of a drink. And it just was no fun at all. Nothing about it was enjoyable. Searching for that feeling and then thinking to yourself, oh, I'm going to be able to stop after 2 or 3 or whatever drinks and stuff like that, but not realizing that you're just getting started after about 2 or 3 drinks, and then the next thing you know, you've got way too many of them gone, and the problems have certainly come back in spades, and there you are. So no amount of waiting, no amount of not drinking, no amount of trying, no amount of trying to control the drinking would ever work. Not for me, and I just dare say not for most anybody else. So, Rob?
Yeah, it says here on page 151, a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle or control would enable us to do it. But where did we read that before? Page 30. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We're hoping that there's going to be some pill or something that's going to allow us to drink. But you know what? Science has not done that yet, and it doesn't look like they ever will. So the old pleasures were gone. I can tell you from my own experience that, you know what, in the last few days of my drinking, it was not fun at all. It was torture. Life was just not anything that I enjoyed. Everything around me was a chore. It was a pain. Drinking to escape, drinking to survive. Not fun at all. Well, welcome, Kathy. We're on page 151. And we're at the second paragraph. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. As we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that his loneliness settled down, it thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily we did, then would come oblivion, and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand.
Certainly so. It's one of the loneliest things that I've ever done. Was those final months of me trying to rekindle and recapture the old spirit of just drinking as an ingredient to a great evening, a great time, great afternoon, etc. Just not there. And there it was, just feeling that awkwardness of having a drink and the things that came with it. So anyway, it was a dark time, just like it says here. It was a dark time. Rob?
Yeah, you know what? I've read that paragraph and I get depressed just reading it and thinking of, how bad it is. But, then think about today and how grateful we are that, we're through that, or hopefully we're through that. And what does God want for us? He wants us to be joyous and free, to enjoy life, to be a part of life. When we were drinking, I was isolating myself. I was sitting down in my basement all by myself, drinking until I had my fill, go to bed, and then do it again the next day. I always mention Dr. Bob's nightmare because I think of Dr. Bob a lot and his story. And for 17 years, he would wake up in the morning, take sedatives in order to calm his shaking hands because he was a proctologist. He operated on people. Who wants a doctor that's hands are shaking like crazy, especially when they're working on your rear end? And he would then go to work so he could make money in order to buy alcohol on the way home. And then he would do the same thing again the next day. 17 years, he did the same thing over and over again. What type of life is it? It's like it being a hamster on the wheel. The hamster just keeps going around and around and around. There's no end to it. We have the solution and the course of action that we can take in order to get better. But as I say, when I read this paragraph, all I can think about is Dr. Bob and the 17 years that he went through his alcoholism. And then I think of myself isolating, keep pushing everybody away so that I can just drink the way I want to drink. Not much of a life. Today, it's totally different. I want people around me. I want to enjoy life. And I want people to enjoy life. It's a whole different way of thinking. Before, I only thought about myself. Now, today, I try to think of other people. And how can I make their life a little bit better? How can I make their life just a little bit easier? I don't expect to make huge changes in people's lives. A smile, a laugh, how are you doing today? And actually meaning it can make a huge difference in somebody's life. Think about that. Now and then, a serious drinker being dry at the moment says, I don't miss it at all. Feel better, work better, having a better time. As ex-prone drinkers, we smile at such a sally. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end.
Yeah. So I can relate to this to some extent. The feeling of getting sober, staying sober, and being in that kind of place right after you kind of have started down that path and realizing that you can get a day or two or three under your belt, maybe a week or two, and after that everything is supposed to be solved. It's all ready to go, and you're good to go. Everybody, and this is my other part, is everybody should just forgive and forget. let bygones be bygones and move on. And I was on top of the world at that point. And then at the same time, I was not, because I was realizing that one, people didn't forget, and I was frustrated with that. Two, I was still having multiple thoughts in a day about drinking, trying to figure things out. I would look around and I would find myself trying to figure out how to get a drink and hide it from other people, and realizing that all I was doing was basically just successfully white knuckling it throughout the day. And there it was. I mean, I was absolutely ready to just drink myself into oblivion and try to get away with it and not get caught. No, I wasn't happy about being sober at that point. It took a long time for me to convince myself that I wanted to be sober. There was this thing that I kind of came to the conclusion that I needed to get sober before I actually came to the conclusion that I wanted to get sober. So they kind of followed each other. But I finally got to that point, and it wasn't until I got to the point that I said I wanted to get sober that I started to actually really dig into things and actually give myself the opportunity to open up my eyes, my ears, my mind, and my heart, and truly have that spiritual experience that I think is necessary in order to be able to get through this successfully. And I talked about loneliness before in the previous paragraph, but they bring it up in this one here, and it is just really a dark, lonely time. When they do talk about the jumping off place, and we will wish for the end, we're not talking about just the end of drinking. We're talking about the end of his life. This is a serious place to be, and it's one that needs some care and some involvement with some assistance, and it certainly should get there. But this is a very serious thing. So, Rob?
Yeah, I'm sure most of us can think about some of the people that haven't made it. I know I had a cousin, 54 years of age, drank herself to death. Just didn't want the solution. And it's sad because, we want it for everybody, but we can't make people take it, the program. We can only want it for them. And, we think about Jim, 6 times. He was in the hospital, and each time they went to visit him, explain the program. People don't always get it the first time. What is the step 1 promise? Is that, we are going to drinking game. Why? Because nothing has changed. Until things change, okay, it's going to stay the same. We're going to go back to the same things that have, we've done in the past. Remember, we cast aside old ideas, prejudices, and a new set of ideas are brought into our mind. And that's what this program does. Brings in new thoughts and new ideas, a whole new way of living that we had never thought about before. We're on page 152, everybody. Welcome, Linda. We have shown how we got out from under. You say, yes, I am willing, but am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum, like some righteous people I see? I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute?
Oh, we have a great substitute, and it is this fellowship. It's your higher power. It's just really enjoying the things that you didn't actually enjoy whenever you were drinking. It's amazing at how you're able to kind of wake up and realize that there's so much more that's going on. A lot of people will stop drinking and get sober and be on the path to recovery and find themselves being successful at work, being successful with relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying that everything is great. I'm not saying it's all golden and sweet and nice. There still is the life that we have. It is still that I think is as there's Tony would say, is that if you were an asshole when you were drunk, you're still an asshole when you're sober. So 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 there's still some things to work on, but man, there is just so much more that I realized about things that I enjoy now that I wasn't enjoying back then. I mean, getting up in the morning, for example, and not feeling that just flat, sluggishness of a hangover is something that I every once in a while remind myself and just smile at when I get up and I'm looking out and the day is new, it's bright, and I realize that I'm going to be able to tackle it in a way that I wasn't able to before. But not only that, I would just tell you that the book is about to answer that question better than I can. So anyway, we're going to go through that as well. I'll turn it back over to you, Rob.
Yeah, well, it's funny how the book, they put a question in there, and do they expect us to answer that question? No, Bill's going to answer it for us. And that's what I like about this book. They come up with a question, but they answer it for us. You know, but I love here. Am I to be stupid, boring, and glum like some righteous people I know? No, God wants us to be joyous, happy, and free. Wants us to enjoy life. That's what God wants for us. But here, this is Bill's vision right here. Yes, there is a substitute, and it is vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus, we find the fellowship, and so will you. How is that to come about, you ask? Where am I to find these people? Another question mark.
Yep. And there we are. Yes, there is a substitute and is vastly more than that. And it is the fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, look at us. We come together each weekend and we have a great time talking about the big book and sharing stories and it's nice. The time that we have outside of the meetings is also nice and just enjoyable. There's always somebody there to help and to assist. And when things get tough, it just makes it a little bit easier knowing that there's other people out there and about. So, Rob?
Yeah, I look at all the people in the squares here, and I know a lot of these people from other meetings. We come together, and I can tell you that Greg is always driving in his car. He never stops driving. Him and Pinto Pete are similar in that, they're always on the go. Kimberly, who I've met from other meetings, Kathy, such a beautiful woman. Pam Y, Louise from the Scotland, who's making sure my wife is not spending a fortune over there, right? I hope. Therese, who's over in Brazil enjoying this beautiful sunshine under a bamboo hut. How I would love to have her life. Jenny, who got 2 little kittens not that long ago. We know a little bit about each other's life. This is what it's all about, is we know a little bit about each other. Linda, who comes every week, and we appreciate you so much being here. Ron H, Andrew from Toronto, Bill S, who runs his own study at 11 a.m. on Fridays, and he does a great job, who has been an incredible mentor to me. And it's these things that we've learned from the people that we get to interact with now. Before Zoom, yeah, we wouldn't have known each other. We would have gone to in-person meetings and we would become friends with those people and we would get involved in their life. What an incredible life that we had to live now. Instead of being isolated in my basement, now I get to interact with all you people, get to know a little bit about you, the dogs that Louise has, all these little things that, are so important, that bring us out of our shell. Before, alcohol gave us the ease and comfort that we were looking for, so we could, be a little more boisterous, act a little bit taller, a little bit stronger, a little bit smarter. Now we have God in our life. And what can we do for somebody else today? How can I make your life a little bit better? Because it makes my life better. And step 12, Helping others is the keystone of our existence, of our life. I can go on and I'll get off my soapbox now, but you know, this is an incredible journey that we're on, and the people we get to interact with and get to spend time with. We are blessed. We really are. You're going to meet these new friends in your own community. Near you, alcoholics are dying helplessly, like people in a sinking ship. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds, high and low, rich and poor. These are future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Among them, you will make lifelong friends. You will be bound to them with new and wonderful ties, for you will escape disaster together, and you will commence shoulder to shoulder your common journey. Then you will know what it means to give of yourself, that others may survive and rediscover life. You will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yeah, it's just a really nice way of saying that what Rob just conveyed in real time and in a personal way with regard to this group. I will extend this out that it's in your own community. Well, in our Zoom community, because obviously we are from all over the world, and that didn't happen back in the 1930s by any stretch of the imagination. It took long periods of time to travel from one town to another and one state to another, let alone one country to another. But we have it at the touch of a computer. So they do talk about the fact that again, they talk about the seriousness of the alcoholics are dying helplessly like people on a sinking ship. There were hundreds of people around us, not including the Zoom applications. And right now, I can say that I've been friends with a great many of you guys now for a couple of 3 years, and that's only because things have just been going on for that long. I mean, I expect that this will just continue on for as long as we want, And what a great thing. And Rob?
Well, the one thing about Zoom is that before we lived in a little bubble. We didn't know people from all over the world going through the same things that we are, the same lives. We're all looking for the same thing, We're trying to recover from alcoholism. We all have the same goal, we have to give of ourselves and not take anymore, It's, I don't know if Zoom is here to stay forever, but it's brought so many wonderful people into our lives, and I'm grateful for it. It got me into the program of action, which is found where? In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is not found in the fellowship. Fellowship is where we get to meet other people and we get to talk to each other. We get sponsees, we get sponsors, we get people to help us hopefully take us through the big book, so that we can then become recovered. It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy, respected, and useful once more. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute, and hopelessness? The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you. Should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, we are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that.
Sure does. And all of us can say that there's a miracle that happened to get us to the point of being able to recover and be sober for the period of time that we've been. Some have been sober for decades. Others of us have been just a few months to a few years. But nonetheless, we've all found that miracle, and we have gotten out of the misery, out of the guilt and the regret that I always felt, and the awkwardness of, knowing that no matter what I did, I wasn't going to be a good drinker and would end up being a really bad drunk. It is absolutely a miracle for all of us. Rob?
Yeah, should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, the 12 steps. That's what it's all about. We are sure that they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that. Our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched on the world tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize upon it to follow its suggestions. Many, we are sure, will rise to their feet and march on. They will approach still other sick ones, and fellowships of Alcoholics Anonymous may spring up in each city and hamlet, havens for those who must find a way out.
Yeah, and we certainly have done that. One of the messages here in these last couple of paragraphs is you've got to get on the bus. You've got to get going, and you've got to pick up the program of AA, and certainly get out there and work the steps, all of them, and have that spiritual experience. And then at the same time, carrying the message forward to others. That's our step 12. We refer back to that again and again and again in this book, and certainly have just done it again here. And what a deal. And there's that word hope. What we have this whole chapter is really kind of themed around. Rob?
Yeah, I just put something on the chat, and it's what it is a picture. And in the 1930s, what they would do is at the AA office is people would write letters, and what would happen is that somebody's looking, for help. And so what they would do is they had a map, and what they would do is they'd put a certain colored pin in the map that this person is looking for help in North Dakota, we'll say. And somebody else might write in and say, they have received the book, they are, they're not drinking anymore, and they're looking for other people. And so what they would do is they would, this person might be from North Dakota too, so they would put a pin, different color pin in the map. Then they would hook these two people up. They would start a group in North Dakota. What painstaking time that must have taken. Today we don't have that problem, because we have groups. I know that just in my own neighborhood, the church I used to go to as a child have 3 meetings a week there. Did I know that when I was drinking? No, but I found out later. There's another church not that far from me that they have a meeting. There's, a community center that's having a meeting. There's many meetings in my vicinity that I can go to. In the 1930s, they didn't have that. As I say, they painstakingly would read each letter, and then they would mark on a map and then try to hook people up together. The lengths that these people went to. Now, these were non-alcoholic women, Ruth Hawk, Bobby Berger, people like that, and then these meetings sprang up slowly at the beginning, then now very quickly. Because let's be honest, when a meeting started up here in Toronto and then somebody got a resentment, what happens? They start their own meeting. They grab a coffee pot and they start their own meeting. So another meeting spreads. So it's funny. You look back on it, but you know what? Thank God things happen. And, there's many meetings that I can go to. In the chapter Working with Others, you gathered an idea of how we approach and aid others to health. Suppose now that through you, several families have adopted this way of life. You will want to know more of how to proceed from that point. Perhaps the best way of treating you to a glimpse of your future be to describe the growth of the fellowship among us. Here is a brief account. Do you want me to keep going, Leo, or you want to comment?
Let's just go ahead and keep going. We're just
okay. Years ago in 1935, one of our number made a journey to a certain western city. From a business standpoint, his trip came up badly. Had he been successful in his enterprise, he would have been set on his feet financially, which at the time seemed vitally important. But his venture wound up in a lawsuit and bogged down completely. The proceeding was shot through with much hard feeling and controversy.
Absolutely. What we're talking about here is Bill W. Going to Akron, Ohio, and was making a pitch and a bid to become principal at National Rubber Machine Company. And obviously that we know through some of our other discussions and readings that that failed, and that was the stepping off point for Bill finding Dr. Bob, and then things just kind of progressed from there. But proceeding was shot through with much hard feeling and controversy, but nonetheless, and boy, was Bill tempted, as we know, but fortunately was able to find through a couple of folks, Dr. Bob, and that's how things got kicked off. Rob?
Yeah, we're going to read the story about Bill and Dr. Bob and all the things that had happened. You know, if this business deal had gone through, Bill was promised the presidency, according to Bill Shaberg, who writing the big book. Bill was promised the presidency. Bill would have been set on his feet financially. Now, would AA ever have been created? Not by Bill, maybe by somebody else later on down the road. We don't know. But if that deal had gone through, Bill would have just gone on his merry way, being president, collected his money. Would he have gone back to drinking? I don't know. Who knows? You know, we can't look into a crystal ball and find out what woulda, coulda, shoulda happened. But we do know what did happen. Thank God the deal did not go through, because it set Bill on a different path. And that path, you know, helped me immensely, and I'm grateful for it. So let's read the story about Bill. Bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited and almost broke. Still physically weak and sober but a few months, he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but who?
We'll just keep going on, Rod.
Okay, you tell me when you want me to stop. Just put up a thumb or something, and I'll keep an eye out for it.
Yep.
One dismal afternoon, he paced a hotel lobby, wondering how his bill was to be paid. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby, a door opened into an attractive bar. He could see the gay crowd inside. In there, he would find companionship and release. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape an acquaintance and would have a lonely weekend.
We'll stop right there for just a second. Bill allegedly had $10 in his pocket, so not a lot of money, although that was quite a bit back then. Certainly was enough to pay for hotel and a meal or two, but not anything for any length of time as far as that goes. But let's look back here. He's bitterly discouraged. He's in a strange place. Something bad has happened. A lot of people find that as a major trigger in putting them back into the bottle and drinking again. You know, we always find reasons to drink, whether they're good or bad. In this case, it's one of those times where it's bad, and it would be just that weak moment, that easy position to basically come in to say, "Oh, heck it," as I used to say, you know, I'm going to drink no matter what here. And I have a really good reason, because I just failed at a business bid that I was working on so long and so hard at. And not only that, but look at all of the people in the bar. They're all laughing, they're carrying on, they're having good. Remember that conviviality, that fun, that, you know, the normal drinker, where drinking is just an ingredient, it's not the main focus of things. And there you go. And obviously he is at a very dangerous and weak spot, and he's got to do something. So Rob, go ahead and keep reading.
Yep. Of course he couldn't drink. Why not sit hopefully at a table, a bottle of ginger ale before him? After all, had he not been sober 6 months now? Perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks, no more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again, it was the old insidious insanity, that first drink. With a shiver, he turned away and walked down the lobby to the church directory. Music and gay chatter still floated to him from the bar.
Yeah, and I kind of look at this as that the obsession is gripping him. He recognizes the lie that is going on with regard to the old insidious insanity, that first drink. It's tempting, and boy, does he muster up some real strength there to, like I said, shiver, or like it says, shiver and walk down the lobby to the church directory. It's kind of like you've got the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, and they're both whispering in your ear, and it's just dependent on which one you're going to listen to, as far as that goes. Rob?
Thank God he went to the church directory. I posted a couple of pictures of the Mayflower Hotel in the chat, just in case anybody wants to take a look, and one where somebody's drawn something. We're at the bottom of page 154. Well, what about his responsibilities? His family and the men who would die because they would not know how to get well. Ah, yes, those other alcoholics. Step 12. There must be many such in this town. He would phone a clergyman. His sanity returned, and he thanked God. Selecting a church at random from the directory, he stepped into a booth and lifted the receiver.
Yeah. So see what just happened? He's thinking about others. And in that thinking about others, his sanity slowly but surely comes back, and he gets rid of the idea of drinking, and he is off to going out to see who he can find that he can help. And certainly that's going to help. Rob?
Yep. His call to the clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town, who, though formerly able and respected, was then nearing the nadir of alcoholic despair. It was the usual situation: home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, and standing damaged. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape. Painfully aware of being somehow abnormal, the man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic. And here there's an asterisk. This refers to Bill's first visit with Dr. Bob. These men later became co-founders of AA. Bill's story opens the text of this book. Dr. Bob heads the story section.
Sure does. And so there's a couple of things here. We're talking about the clergyman is Reverend Walter Tunks. And he pointed Bill in the direction of Henrietta Seiberling, who then basically came up with the name of a Dr. Robert Smith, also known as Bob S. or Dr. Bob, and his wife Ann. And this is exactly what we always look at as being the kind of the beginning, the very, very, very beginning of AA. And the two co-founders are getting together for the first time. Rob?
Yep. When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary, but the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. He told how he lived in constant worry about those who might find out about his alcoholism. He had, of course, a familiar alcoholic obsession that few knew of his drinking. Why, he argued, should he lose the remainder of his business, only to bring still more suffering to his family by foolishly admitting his plight to people from whom he had made his livelihood? He would do anything, he said, but that.
Yeah, and this discussion, they talked for 6 hours, and really what happened here was Bill talked about his problem, not about Bob's problem, and really that's what got Dr. Bob interested, is because he was telling a story that actually resonated with him. And I think that there's a misnomer here. He said he had, of course, the familiar alcoholic obsession that few knew of his drinking. I would gather to say that more people than you think know of your drinking, and it's not really as big a secret as you might think it is. But nonetheless, it did get Dr. Bob to open up and start to talk about his issues and challenges. Again, this meeting was only supposed to go on for about a half hour to an hour, and ended up going on for 6 hours. Rob?
Thank God they met and were able to, let's be honest. Bill had, before Bill was trying to hit everybody over the head with his white light experience, You know, Dr. Silkworth told him, Bill, stop hitting these people over the head with the guy. Teach them and tell them, you know, how deflated they are, you know, how they're beyond human aid. You know, teach them about the allergy and, you know, the obsession of the mind. You know, explain. Being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home. Sometime later, and just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, he went on a roaring bender. For him, this was a spree that ended all sprees. He saw that he would have to face his problem squarely, that God might give him mastery.
Oops, I went 2 pages. I was like, there was something there. Oh, I apologize. But when I turned the page, it ended up turning 2 pages. I lost it for a second. So Dr. Bob obviously had invited had invited Bill, and after 6 hours, he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation. He went shortly thereafter. He went on to a convention in Atlantic City. He was found himself drinking heavily on the trip down, and was having a hard time getting himself checked in, and decided to check out. He came home early. He detoxed. He had, as I understand here, surgery 3 days later, if I'm not mistaken, from when he got back. And that was successful. Good. And then he said he went and made amends to everyone, and had a very positive response from that. And he never drank again. And again, we're talking about Dr. Bob. Rob?
Yeah, Dr. Bob was going to a medical convention that he went to every year, and in Atlantic City, New Jersey, he got drunk on the way there to Atlantic City, and you know, we get into the dates when should the Founders Day be the founding of AA be June 10th or June 17th? Well, we won't get into that. That doesn't really matter because it you know, the medical convention didn't start until a certain date, which is later than June 10th. So, oh well. We shall not get into trivial details. Let's not argue about something that's not that important. We know that Alcoholics Anonymous started, and that's the most important thing that you know, we're going to talk about. One morning, he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared what his trouble had been. He found himself surprisingly well received and learned that many knew of his drinking. Stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went about, for this might mean ruin, particularly to a person in his line of business.
Well, he made his amends. He's doing steps basically 4 through 9, and he's doing it actively. He gets out and about. Rob, how long was he out? It seems like we know he was gone for quite a while.
He was gone the whole day.
Yeah, I thought there was something exorbitant about the fact that he was gone. Like, he went way into the evening, I guess. He started in the morning, and
he did. And this is what worried Bill and Ann, is that they were worried that has he gone out again?
Yep.
And so, you know, this is what Bill and everybody else that back home are worried about. You know, well, where's Dr. Bob? Where did he go? Here he's gone to make amends to these people. You know, see, at midnight, he came home exhausted, but very happy. He had not had a drink since. As we shall see, he now means a great deal to his community, and the major liabilities of 30 years of hard drinking have been repaired in 4.
Yep. So that's it. He's just gone. The people worried. He's gotten back, and after that, you know, the nice thing is that going out and admitting this to other people is in part therapeutic, and helps you, especially when you get a positive response. And Dr. Bob certainly did. So all good stuff. Rob?
Yeah, you know, life, you know, they talk about life is not easy coming up. So we'll get into that. But life was not easy for these two friends. Plenty of difficulties presented themselves. Both saw that they must keep spiritually active. One day they called up the head nurse of a local hospital. They explained their need and inquired if she had a first-class alcohol prospect. Want me to keep
Yep.
going?
Yep, let's go ahead.
Okay. She replied, yes, we've got a corker. He's just beaten up a couple of nurses. Goes off his head completely when he's drinking. But he's a grand chap when he's sober, though he's been in here 8 times in the last 6 months. Understand he was once a well-known lawyer in town, but just now we've got him strapped down tight. Asterisk. This refers to Bill and Dr. Bob's first visit to AA number 3. See the Pioneer section. This resulted in AA's first group at Akron, Ohio in 1935.
And Rob, we're talking about Mr. Bill Dotson, the one and only. So this was a common practice back then. Obviously, people going to sober up and dry out, they would go to the hospitals, and the hospitals would have beds available for that very thing. The nurse that we're talking about here is Ms. Hall, who became close friends with both Dr. Bob and Bill, mainly Dr. Bob, though. And she was very instrumental in helping to guide Dr. Bob and others to some of the worst cases that they had in regards to alcoholism. And I think it's interesting here, Rob, after beating up a couple of nurses, Ms. Hall still can describe him as a grand chap when he's sober. So, most people don't take that kind of tact after somebody's done something as bad as what this guy has, although obviously it wasn't that bad, but it was bad enough.
I'm assuming her eyes weren't the ones that were blackened.
I'm guessing you're probably
this just shows, people's personalities change when they drink, and a grand chap when he's sober, but an animal when he's drinking, and wow. It was a prospect, all right, but by the description, none too promising. Use of spiritual principles in such cases were not so well understood as it is now. But one of the friends that put him in a private room will be down. 2 days later, a future fellow of Alcoholics Anonymous stared glassily at the strangers beside his bed. Who are you fellows, and why this private room? I was always in a ward before, said one of the visitors. We're giving you a treatment for alcoholism.
Yeah, and there is a story behind getting into a private room. Those were usually reserved for people that they feared were on their last leg and not going to make it, and were shortly going to pass away soon. So imagine Bill Dotson's concern when he goes from being in a ward to being in a private room. But all it was is that Dr. Bob and Bill wanted to have him with his undivided attention, no distractions, and thought that they could work much easier with a one-on-one type of approach to his getting him sober. Rob?
Yeah, in Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, it says that, quote, Bill Dotson is saying that he wasn't sure whether he was dying or whether his wife was going to be leaving him. And so he wasn't sure why they gave him this private room. Later on, he found out why. Also, they mentioned Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde earlier in the book and how it changes a person's personality. And it's a perfect, thing to think about Bill Dotson. When he's not drinking, he's a perfect chap. Give him a special brew, alcohol, and he turns into Dr. Jekyll. It's just goes to show how much we can change. Hopelessness was written on the man's face as he replied, "Oh, but that's no use. Nothing would fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand it."
Yep, and he's kind of working on this step 1. He's admitting that he's completely powerless over alcohol, and so if you kind of read into this, that's what Bill is saying, Mr. Dotson. When I say Bill, so he doesn't think there's any use to it at all, but fortunately there is. Rob?
Yeah, here goes a guy that, the last 3 times on the way home, he went out drinking. they'd go into the hospital, they'd dry them out, release them, but nothing changed. That's the big thing. What is changing? If we do not change, we're going to do the same thing over. That's the step one promise, which I talked about. Relapse. Why? Because they have no solution. We know we got a problem, but if we don't have a solution and a course of action, nothing is changing. So that's what this book is all about. It gives us a solution and the course of action to take. For an hour, the two friends told him about their drinking experiences. Over and over, he would say, that's me, I drink like that. The man in the bed was told of the acute poisoning from which he suffered, how it deteriorates the body of an alcoholic and warps his mind. There was much talk about the mental state preceding the first drink.
Yeah, so the two friends told him about their drinking experience. And remember, this is kind of how it starts out. You talk about your experience, and what normally happens is exactly what happens to Mr. Dodson, and that is that he would say, that's me, I drink like that. And so there was this connection, this bond that was being built and created. And then they go on to talk about the bad things about drinking, obviously, that we all know now. The poisoning, the deterioration of the body, and the warping of the mind, and then ultimately the mental state preceding the first drink, which we've obviously got as the malady of the mind now. So, Rob, let's bring
Mr. Bill.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. This is a real good part of the book. This is one of my favorite chapters here. It's got a lot of the history here, what took place. Bill starts out, he's writing a little bit of like an introduction on alcoholism, telling us what happens, the four horsemen, all of that. This is what happens to us when we drink. We wake up with all that kind of stuff. And then he gets into this here where he talks about when he went to Akron, Ohio. And that where it says years ago in 1935, one of our number made a journey to a certain western city. That's Bill. He's talking about himself there. And he talks about this enterprise that he was involved in. They were going to have like a proxy vote to take over this rubber machine company, National Rubber Machine Company. And the whole deal fell through. Bill was going to be the president, and he was going to get paid a salary of something over $200,000 in today's money. So he would have been set on his feet. Everything would have been went fine, and the whole thing fell apart. Some of the proxies changed their votes, or whatever happened, and the whole deal fell apart. And these people went back to New York to get their legal team together, and they left Bill in Akron all alone. And he was discouraged. He was feeling anxiety. He was feeling depressed because his deal fell apart, and he had all these big hopes that he was going to be this president of this company and make all kinds of money. So he doesn't know what to do. He feels rotten. Now he's pacing the lobby of the Mayflower Hotel, and he's trying to wonder how his bill is going to be paid because he only had $10 in his pocket. And $10 back then, that's the equivalent of somewhere between $150 and $200 today. That might pay for one night in the hotel. That's about it. But for however many days he was there, he didn't have enough money to cover the whole thing. So he's wondering what's going to happen, how he's going to do this. He's feeling miserable and horrible. And he sees this bar. There's a bar at one end of the lobby, and there's a church directory at the other. And he's trying to decide which way to go. You know, it's like a devil on one shoulder, an angel on the other. Go this way, no, go this way. And he was thinking of going into the bar, and then he decided, the last second, he decided to go to the church directory. He was coming up with these ideas. He heard the people inside, and he was thinking, I got 6 months of sobriety. Maybe I can have 3 drinks. First, he was just going to have a glass of ginger ale. Then he jumped right to 3 drinks. He didn't even think about 1 and 2. He went right to 3. So this guy's a real alcoholic. I mean, he's over the top. He's ready to go. Does anybody identify with that? I got 6 months of sobriety. Maybe I can have 2 or 3. Yeah, that's exactly what was going through his mind. And instead, he turned and he went to the church directory. And the church directory is like symbolic of divine intervention. Now, he just didn't walk down and pick up a phone book. He went to the church directory. And how he picked out the right guy's name, nobody knows. The book says he picked the name at random. So it's possible he just picked it at random. And there's pictures of that church directory. There's about 80 different names on there. How he picked the right one, we don't know. But he did pick the right one. And the guy he picked was the Reverend Walter Tunks. And the Reverend Walter Tunks was one of the people that founded the Oxford group in Akron. And when Bill called him on the phone, Bill told him that he was from the Oxford group and that he was a drunk and he needed another drunk to talk to. So because Reverend Tunks was in the Oxford group and he founded the Oxford group in Akron, he knew what Bill was trying to do. He needed somebody to work with so that he could stay better, because that was one of the Oxford group principles, that once you got better, you got saved or whatever they called it back then, you were supposed to pass it on to other people. So the Reverend Tunks gave him a whole bunch of phone numbers, and Bill called them all, and he couldn't get anybody. He couldn't find an alcoholic. And finally, the last number that he called was Henrietta Seiberling. And she had been praying for months for somebody to come by and be able to help one of her friends that couldn't stop drinking. And her friend was Dr. Bob. And he was in the Oxford group, and he couldn't stop drinking. And Henrietta was praying for months for something to happen, somebody to show up that knew how to help him. And all of a sudden, Bill calls her out of the clear blue sky and says, I'm a drunk from New York, and I got a way of fixing drunks that they don't have to drink anymore. And Henrietta believed that this was divine intervention. Her prayers were answered. So she invited them both over, and Dr. Bob couldn't make it that day because Henrietta called him up, and he was drunk at home. He was either under the table or up in the bedroom or drunk, whatever. But he was passed out drunk. So they said, so she invited them for dinner the next night. And Dr. Bob made his wife promise that they would only stay for 15 minutes. And that's all he was going to talk to this guy. And according to Dr. Bob's story in the back of the book, they stayed there for 6 hours and 15 minutes. Because once Bill started talking to him, Bill didn't tell him that you better stop drinking. You know, can't you see what you're doing to yourself? Why don't you pull yourself up by your bootstraps? You know, all the stuff that we all heard when we were drinking. Bill told Dr. Bob about Bill's drinking. And Dr. Bob identified with him. And Dr. Bob was willing to listen to him because he knew that this guy understood what alcoholism does to somebody from his own experience, not from any kind of book smarts or not from hearing it from somebody else. So Dr. Bob was willing to listen, and Dr. Bob listened to him, and Bill was able to help him stop drinking at this point. But then again, he went back out and he drank a little bit after that. He had to go down to this convention, this medical convention that they had in Atlantic City. He went down there and he got drunk on the train. You can read it in his story of everything that happened. And he stayed there for a couple of days, and he kept getting drunk, and he figured he better get out of there before he disgraces himself in front of all his colleagues. So he came back, and he was so drunk when he got back, he couldn't even leave the train station. He had to call up his nurse from his doctor's office, and her and her husband came down and picked him up, and they took Dr. Bob back home with them, and they tried to detox him, and they called Bill and Dr. Bob's wife. They took him back to Dr. Bob's house, and they kept him there for a couple of days and detoxed him, however long the period was. And then he finally went and he did surgery because he had to do surgery on a guy. And Bill gave him 1 bottle of beer in the morning, and he figured that would keep him from shaking. And after the surgery was done, Dr. Bob disappeared, and they thought he went back out. And what happened was he went up and down the street making amends to all the people that he needed to make amends to. I'm sure he couldn't complete all his amends. Most likely he owed a lot of people money because every time he got money, he just went out and got drunk with it. So, and he was a doctor. He probably ordered a lot of medical supplies and he never paid his bills. So he had to go make some kind of arrangements or whatever. So he started doing that. And from that point on, he never drank. And so that's why going through this process and doing step 9 is really, really important. Because if we feel guilty over things that we did, we use that as a reason to drink. Or we don't even know we're doing it. Sometimes it's in the back of our mind. We just feel guilt and remorse over something, and we take a drink because we know that makes it go away. Then they talk about them getting in touch with AA number 3, Bill Dotson, and that's really a great story here. They went to they called up this nurse at the hospital, Miss Hall, and supposedly when Dr. Bob called up and he talked to Miss Hall, he said, "We have a way of fixing drunks to keep them from drinking." And Miss Hall said to him, "Dr. Bob, have you tried this on yourself?" Because everybody knew that Dr. Bob was a drunk, and he thought that nobody knew it. It says that he had the obsession that nobody knew he was a drunk. When you're an active drunk, that's like walking around with your fly open. Everybody else sees it except for you. And so everybody knew Dr. Bob was a drunk, but he thought nobody knew about it. So they went to the hospital to talk to this guy, and they had to wait for like 2 days because they said they had him strapped down. That's how they treat people that are going through the DTs. They give you some kind of sedatives and they strap you down so you don't hurt yourself. And they still do that today in certain places. They'll strap you down to the bed so you don't jump up and run into the wall and start banging your head or try to jump out the window. So they had him strapped down because he was going through the DTs, and it took like 2 days for him to stop going through the DTs before they could come and talk to him. Then they went and they talked to him, and the rest is history. AA took off from there, and this is a great story. And what Bill's doing is he's showing us how by using step 12, it can keep you sober, because you can't stay sober by yourself. Bill was ready to drink when he was in the Mayflower Hotel, and he got the idea in his head that he better go try to help somebody else. And when he tried to help somebody else, which is step 12, that kept him sober. His sanity returned because he was trying to help somebody else. So by doing step 12, that's the treatment for alcoholism, working with another alcoholic. And if we do that, we got a real good chance of staying sober for the rest of our life if we keep working with people. If we don't work with people and we just try to talk ourselves out of it, it's probably not going to work. And that's the point Bill's trying to get across here by writing all these stories in here. Well, that's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Okay, Rob, let's go ahead and close out with the Serenity Prayer.
Of course. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
All right. Thank you.